One of the cool things I want to mention about Denise, and it goes along with Bishop Ron's kind of vision of raising up leaders. Was it in the past year or so? 2 years? Past year or so? Denise is a pastor now.
Oh, no, it's been 4 years.
Oh, 4 years. She's been a pastor for 4 years now.
I'm just pastoring now.
She's actually pastoring now a church down in New Mexico and everything. So it's pretty cool just to see that as she's progressed. So we'll let Denise talk now.
Hey, everyone. It's so good to be here. This is my home. I came to Christ here. I always feel so welcome when I'm here and so loved, and I miss you guys so much. And so I very much enjoyed the worship this morning. I think there's going to be some slides. Is there slides? No? Okay. Well, you guys don't get pictures. Sorry. There was pictures. I'll share them on my ministry page, and you can look at them there. So the last year obviously has been kind of a crazy, difficult year for everybody, with the obvious pandemic and, social injustice and riots and election and politics. And so it just has been a wild, wild year for most everybody. And I'm certainly no exception. It's been some very, very difficult heartbreaks. My daughter graduated from college in May. I did not get to see her graduate. That will always be probably the hardest part of all of this, because I feel like I was robbed as a parent, that I did not get to see her graduate, but she's doing awesome. And I also had the virus in May. I was very sick. I was on oxygen for over a month, but I lived. So it was scary. For those of you that don't know, I live and work in New Mexico. I do my ministry there. We are extremely locked down. I very much have enjoyed being here this week. I oftentimes have felt like I was doing something wrong. So it has been very difficult. Our kids are not in school. Everything's locked down. We have curfews and we have fines and just unbelievable restrictions that you guys don't have to do. You guys can go in and out of the stores the same way, and you can go down the aisle both ways. We can't do any of that. And we have massive food shortages. I got a message from one of my fellow missionaries that actually shared recently here. She's like, you need to get some food for yourself when you're there because their shelves are empty again. And that's happened quite often just because of circumstances. We are obviously harder hit than here. I've had 10 friends die. That has been hard. Some of them are younger than me. New Mexico has the highest death rate in the country. And that's not to minimize, there's obviously been death and cases here, but it is pretty extreme. In New Mexico, we probably have about 5 times as more cases that Saline County does, and certainly lots and lots and lots of death. And so it has been a difficult year, but I don't want to talk about that anymore because I'm done with it. I've told people often this, I've been here a week, that the last year has been the most powerful, most fruitful year of ministry that I have had in 14 years, by far. God has done amazing things with all that has gone wrong. And so I have a hard time dwelling on those negative things because God has done so much in the last year. And I wish I had the pictures, but you'll just have to take my word for it. Also, the last year, people have been more generous than they ever have been in the 14 years I've been doing this. And it just humbles me and it warms my heart to know that in the depths of despair and tragedy and so much grief everywhere, that people have become more generous, that my brothers and sisters have raised up and no, this is not the time to hold on to that little stuff we have. We're going to be crazy generous with what we have. And this church, CrossRoads Church, has been unbelievably generous this last year. I have individuals in this church that support me, and the church supports me. But more than that, there have been times that they have stepped up. One of the hardest things when all of this started, it was very difficult because I teach GED. I help people finish high school. And it became very, very difficult because nothing was open. Nothing still is open. But there was nothing open. And so I was meeting, especially in the summer, I was meeting with students in parks and parking lots, and it was hot and it just wasn't working. And I just kept praying. I'm like, something's got to change here. This isn't working. And my church, Broken Walls, which I now pastor, I didn't pastor it at that time, but I am now, I was the associate pastor. Now I'm the pastor. We couldn't meet because the Navajo Nation is on curfew, and our church was meeting on the Navajo Nation, and you can't be outside or go anywhere on the weekends. Every night and all weekend, they're on curfew. And it's a $1,000 fine if you break that. And so we weren't able to have church at all because it would have been impossible for us to do that without risking $1,000 fines. I don't have an extra $1,000. I mean, we have fines for everything, mask, everything. but we couldn't risk that. And so with the GED stuff and with the homeless stuff that I do and everything, I really started praying in June. I'm like, something has to change. But I am part of a contract with Brethren in Christ World Missions, and it wasn't part of my budget. And so I'm like, I can't rent somewhere because I don't have any money to rent. And so we had sat down with my other ministry leaders, and they're like, no, we need to make this happen. We need to trust that will be provided. And so they're like, find a place, and then we'll give it to God, and we'll go from there. And so I was able to find an office space in downtown Farmington that we would work for my office space. It's actually in an art studio. It was really quirky and weird, but there was like an outdoor like courtyard, and we're like, this will be perfect because we can have church outside because it was still nice, and I can meet with my students and I can do outreach from there. And so it just became apparent, like, we need to do this. But it was $430 a month. And I didn't have the budget for that. And so I reached out, and unbelievably, that money was raised in like 3 weeks. I mean, there was 4 churches that paid a month's rent, and CrossRoads was one of those churches that paid a month's rent for the space. And then the Midwest Conference, our denomination's Midwest Conference, paid a month. And then there was another organization that paid a month. And then there were individuals that gave money. So I was able to purchase chairs and tables because I didn't have anything. It wasn't set up as an office. It was set up as an art studio. And so for 6 months we met there, and it became amazing. Our church began to grow because we were in town. People were able to come. And so we started growing by leaps and bounds. And one of the things I did, I'm like, well, I really have a desire to start a faith-based 12-step. And so we started that. And so we did that before church. And so people would come to 12-step, and then they would come to church because most of the people that come to church are addicts or alcoholics. So it just worked out perfectly. And so then we started offering a meal because 12-step is at 5 and church is at 6. And like, all these people have no food anyways. And so we started offering a meal. But it was such a great place to meet with my students. And I had planned before the pandemic, I really wanted to have 100 graduates last year. I made it to 98. So I think considering that I still had 10 graduates, even with the pandemic, it was just amazing. And God has really blessed me. And so many of them have came to Christ. Like I said, ministry has become much more easy because people are hungry for hope. They want that hope. They want that love. And so I'm actually going to baptize 3 of my students when it warms up. And so it's just been such a blessing to be able to be a part of their lives, and especially the ones that came to Christ, to continue to be in their lives throughout this. And so one of the things that I was also able to do in July that CrossRoads actually was completely responsible for was, obviously we didn't get to have youth camp, but I still had these kids that really needed something still. And so CrossRoads had originally agreed to pay for my students to go to camp, which was so generous. But we didn't get to have camp, and I'm like, I still want to do something with them because they need something. Like, we can't just go do stuff. Like, I was at the YMCA yesterday. It just blew my mind. I haven't been around that many people since last March. And so they haven't did anything. And so CrossRoads was able to provide the money, and I was able to take them to Colorado, and we spent a day at a ski resort doing the summer activities. And the speaker, who was supposed to be the camp speaker for camp, had made these videos to encourage the students because he didn't get to share with them. And so then I was able to take these students and we were able to watch the videos and stuff, and they were so encouraged, and it was so good for them to experience that little break. And I wish there was pictures. There's a sky coaster. It's like a roller coaster you control. It was amazing. I love thrill rides. So I had just as much fun as they did. And so it was definitely a blessing, for sure. And that's something that CrossRoads was a big part of too. But then normally I do 4 big outreaches a year. In the spring, I do a clothing giveaway. And then in August, I usually do a back to school giveaway. In October, I do a coats and cocoa for warm weather items, and then I do a Christmas outreach. Well, those obviously they couldn't happen. And so what we did is in August, we did have a back to school giveaway, and I combined it with a clothing giveaway. So I used that office space that had been rented, and I had the whole space, and what would normally be a 3-hour event on a Saturday became a 3.5-day event because we had to schedule times. And so it was so much work, like so much more work. I hope I never have to do it that way again, but it was still such a blessing. And several people came to Christ as a result of that outreach. And so it was worth it, all the hard work and having to deal with all those extra things. It was still worth it. And then in October, we were able to just still do a coats and cocoa giveaway. We did that outside because it was still warm enough that we could do it outside. And again, several people came to Christ as a result of that. And so I'm just so thankful that despite being in the middle of a pandemic, we still have been able to do some of those outreaches. And especially the coats and cocoa one, a lot of people that came to that outreach have now came to our church. And so that's continued to grow. And I got some students out of it. And so they've just been such a blessing. And I wasn't able to do anything for Christmas. My daughter and I did adopt a family with what we would have normally did for Christmas. And so it has been just an amazing year of ministry. Like I said, I mean, you would think that it would have been worse and that people wouldn't be generous, but it's just warmed my heart. And I'm so thankful that despite all the negative, that even still continues there, that, you know, God is still at work. God's never not been in control. God knew this was going to happen, and he remains in control. And I have to tell you, I told Kimmy, I got goosebumps because I had planned to close my little sharing time with Psalm 46. And that's what she read. And I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't read it now. And I'm like, no, God wanted this church. He wanted all of you to hear this psalm for a reason. And this is a psalm that has been so important to me this last year. So I am going to read it again. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, and she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done. The desolation he has brought on the earth. He makes war cease to end the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." So take those words today because God obviously wanted you to hear them. So that's all I got. Thanks.